Chapter 2. Dick Ross was not happy. Truth be told, Dick Ross was rarely happy. But today he was furious. An asteroid was heading his way. The kid was crying. His wife had that look on her face again. And his Great Neck, Long Island neighborhood was a parking lot. People were packing their cars, parked haphazardly, double parked in some instances. How the hell was he supposed to get out of here in his minivan?
I can't believe I drive a goddamn minivan.
Filled with crap, his wife, and his kid. So yeah, Dick Ross was not happy. He thought he had done a fine job fitting all of their shit in the back of the vehicle. He had used every last inch of free space available. Why couldn't Karen see how great of a job he'd done? And oh my God, why was that kid still crying?
Alyssa, stop your crying.
He had wanted to sound stern, but instead of a bark, it came out more like an unhinged screech. Dick started to count to 10 and tried to breathe more slowly. This was not the time for one of his episodes. While Dick and Karen were outside the minivan's hatch, little Alyssa sat in her car seat in the back of the vehicle, with one hand tightly gripping a half-eaten cherry lollipop, and the other placed with her palm against the car window. The 4-year-old tried to stifle her sobs, but it was impossible. Her attention was focused on the large white pit bull sitting on the curb next to the Ross's vehicle. Dick, Karen touched his arm gently. We can't leave Buddy behind. We need to make room for him in the car. Dick jerked his arm violently away from Karen. He was seething and answered her through gritted teeth.
I've already packed the car and determined we don't have room for the damn dog. He's not coming. That's it. Get in the car, Karen, and shut your mouth. And get the kid under control. We need to get the hell out of here now.
Dick slammed the back hatch of the minivan shut and jumped into the driver's side of the vehicle. When she didn't follow, he lowered the passenger side door so she could hear him.
Karen, I'm not kidding. Get in the car now. Leave the dog. We can get another one after.
Through her fresh round of tears, Alyssa sobbed.
Mommy, I don't want another one. I want Buddy.
Karen Ross was torn. Nothing was more important to her than her daughter and her daughter's happiness. Buddy was part of the family as far as she was concerned. The dog had been Alyssa's friend and protector since the day she was born. Leaving him on the curb to die went against everything she believed in. If she grabbed Alyssa out of the car, there was no telling what Dick would do. He was crazed right now. He was close to a complete meltdown, and that wouldn't be safe for anyone. It never was.
Karen, get in the car.
Dick was livid. Why were they being held up because of the damn dog?
If you don't get in the car right now, I'm leaving without you.
Dick revved the engine for effect. Karen leaned down and kissed the dog's forehead while fighting back tears. Buddy, you be a good boy. Go find a place to hide. Alyssa and I love you very much, but you have to stay behind. I'm so sorry, boy. Buddy understood the words good boy and Alyssa, which caused him to thump his tail happily. But when Karen told him to stay, he vocalized his objections with a heartbreaking whine. Once again, Dick revved the engine. Karen gave Buddy a last pat on the head and got into the minivan. Alyssa continued crying as Dick pulled away from the curb. The road was completely blocked in all directions with parked cars. It seemed that everyone in the neighborhood was packing their vehicles and preparing to leave for safer ground. Frustrated by the situation, Dick drove up and over the curb and onto the lawns of his neighbors, recklessly driving through yards, trying to put distance between himself and the neighborhood. While the Ross family crisis was playing out in the street, Skyler and her grandfather were in the kitchen finishing up packing provisions and last-minute items they might need in their Delta Team-issued rucksacks.
Got everything, Angel?
Skyler took a long look around the kitchen. This kitchen held so many memories for her. She could vividly recall her mom, Jeannie, standing at that stove making dinner for her, Bryce, and Grandpa. The old-school radio and the chrome and formica table it sat on had both been a part of her mealtime routine for as long as she could remember. She glanced up at the wall of photos, awards, and achievement certificates that was directly across from the kitchen table. The wall told the story of her family. There were photos of Grandpa shaking hands with political and military dignitaries. A framed display case with his various medals and ribbons from his years in the service, with a set of dog tags hanging on a hook alongside of it. There were some photos of Skyler in her cheerleading days, all pom-poms and saddle shoes all the time. B, aggressive, B-E, aggressive. And of course, there were more than a few framed newspaper articles about Bryce and his exemplary service record. Nestled amidst these family treasures was an old picture of Jeannie, Grandpa, Bryce, and Skyler stuck in the corner of another framed photo. These were happier times. Jeannie hadn't yet told her children how sick she was when this photo was taken. The kids were all smiles. Skyler walked over to the wall and gently pulled the photo out from the frame. She looked towards her grandfather, who nodded approvingly.
Good catch, darling.
Skyler placed the photo in the front pocket of her rucksack and reached back for her grandfather's dog tags. She lifted them from their hook and dropped them into the rucksack with the photo. She then zipped both safely inside. That's everything for me. Should we grab the radio, Grandpa? Everett shook his head and grinned at his granddaughter.
Nah, we have another one just like it in the bunker.
She looked at her grandfather and laughed. Of course we do. Skyler had never been in the bunker before. She had only recently learned that it existed. When Everett finally did tell her about it, she really wasn't that surprised. Sure, she was a bit taken aback that it existed in the backyard of the home she'd grown up in, but not surprised about its existence. That her grandfather had been so well prepared was something she took for granted. He was a force of nature, her protector, her mentor, her shoulder to cry on. As far as she was concerned, hero was an inadequate word to use to describe Everett Campbell.
Then I guess we're all set, darling.
He headed out the back door and Skyler followed. As soon as the door opened, the din of the neighborhood in chaos engulfed them. Car horns, children crying, adults screaming, tires screeching, a symphony of panic and confusion. She took a good look around the yard she had played in as a child. Memories of family picnics with her mom, tossing a baseball around with her grandfather, playing extreme dodgeball with Bryce. All of these things happened right here. And in just a while, she thought, right here may be gone forever. Where to? She asked her grandfather, her voice raised so he could hear her over all the noise. He nodded towards the 12-by-12 garden shed in the back corner of the yard.
There.
Really? She shook her head incredulously. I can't... Skyler was interrupted by the sound of gunshots. Without hesitation, Skyler and Everett ran towards the street. Dick Ross had not gotten as far as he'd wanted driving up and over people's lawns. This was made quite clear by the crumpled front end of his minivan. The culprit was a mailbox on a cement pole that didn't budge when he tried to run it over. Dick was beyond infuriated. Despite the counting and his breathing exercises, he was knee-deep in one of his episodes. Some may have called it a meltdown. Whatever you wanted to call it, it was bad. Karen and Alyssa stood huddled together alongside the vehicle, both in shock. All of the previous neighborhood chaos had ceased. Everyone on the block was frozen in fear, their attention squarely on Dick, who was at the process of trying to carjack the Garcia family at gunpoint. Father Donnelly, bless his heart, was doing his best to talk Dick down.
Son, please put the gun down. These are trying times and we can't...
Shut the hell up, Padre!
Dick sneered and turned his attention back to the Garcias.
Garcia, get your asses out of the vehicle now!
Mr. Garcia, his wife, and 2 children were absolutely petrified. Through his slightly open driver's side window, he tried to reason with Dick.
Look, my friend, we all want to get out of here safely with our families. Just calm down. Maybe we can...
Mr. Garcia didn't get the opportunity to finish a sentence. Dick used the barrel of the gun to shatter the driver's side window of the Garcia's car and then quickly relocated its tip to Mr. Garcia's temple.
I'm not your goddamn friend!
He cocked the gun and his finger gripped the trigger. Dick had no qualms about shooting his neighbor. A fierce and low growl grabbed his attention. Buddy had made his way to the scene and was approaching Dick with his ears back and his teeth bared.
Stupid dog!
Dick leveled the gun at Buddy and without hesitation pulled the trigger. Dick had seen neither Skyler nor her grandfather making their way towards him, weaving in and out of the cars, staying low, trying to keep out of his peripheral vision. Because of this, Skyler Campbell's flying tackle seemingly came out of nowhere. She attacked his center of gravity and took Dick down just as he shot the gun. Buddy was spared as the bullet ricocheted off the roadway and into one of the minivan's tires with a loud pop. With Dick on the ground stunned, Skyler expertly disarmed him and tossed his gun to her grandfather. She then flipped him over on his stomach, grabbed his wrist, and bent it back. The pain so great, he dared not move. Skyler looked towards her grandfather, smiling. How'd I do?
10 out of 10, darling.
Yes! She exclaimed proudly and pumped her fist. All that training has finally paid off. Dick was not amused by the exchange.
Who in the hell are you people? What's wrong with you? I demand you let me go. I'm just trying to get out of here with my family.
Skyler bent Dick's wrist back a little more, which elicited a high-pitched scream from her prisoner. I think they're going to have to go on ahead without you, she hissed in his ear. Skyler looked towards her grandfather and nodded towards her rucksack. Everett rifled through the bag and came out with 2 large plastic utility ties. He approached them and used one tie around Dick's ankles and one tie around his wrists. Once he was secured, Skyler stood up next to Everett, her foot still firmly on Dick's back.
Someone help me!
Dick begged the neighbors in the street. No one dared move or speak, however. The scene unfolding in front of them had them all riveted. With no rescuers in sight, Dick moved his attention to Alyssa, who was still standing near the minivan, frozen in fear.
Alyssa, honey, come help Daddy. Don't you love me?
Shut up! Skyler was not interested in hearing his pleas. She shoved him in the back with her boot, hard.
Bitch, who do you think you are?
Dick screamed.
Untie me immediately! This is kidnapping! Someone make a citizen's arrest!
Skyler looked down at Dick and tilted her head slightly. Duct tape.
What?
Now Dick was confused. Everett once again rooted around in Skyler's rucksack, this time producing a roll of duct tape.
No. You can't do this to me.
Everett tossed duct tape to his granddaughter. Skyler extended a long piece from the roll and ripped it with her teeth. She then leaned down to Dick and affixed the tape across his mouth. Much better, she said, satisfied. Everett and Skyler both turned their attention to Karen and Alyssa. Buddy the pit bull had repositioned himself next to the child, putting himself between her and Dick. Everett addressed the still motionless crowd on the street.
Anyone have room in their vehicle for this woman and her daughter?
Most of the neighborhood had already packed their cars to the gills with their personal effects. There was a lot of head shaking around the scene. Further down the road, a young man stepped out of his old beat-up AMC Pacer and shouted,
I have room in my back seat, sir, but only for the mom and the little girl. I can't fit the dog, sorry.
What's your name, son?
Everett shouted back.
Jack.
He answered.
Well, Jack, that's mighty nice of you. Can you tell me where you're headed?
New York City. Figured I'd ride this out in the subway tunnels.
Everett shook his head.
You'll never make it that far.
Upon hearing Everett's proclamation, the crowd in the street started murmuring. Clearly, a lot of the neighborhood had a similar plan.
I want you to head to the airport. Get to the underground parking levels. Close the storm gates tight and stay there for 2 weeks. You understand me, Jack?
Everett Campbell was not a man to be second-guessed.
Yes, sir.
Everett turned toward Karen and Alyssa and swept his arm in the direction of Jack and his pacer.
Ladies?
Karen nodded and turned back to Buddy. You stay here, Buddy. Don't worry, Skyler assured her. We'll take good care of him for you. Alyssa walked up to Skyler, tugged on her pant leg, and said,
He likes to get his belly rubbed.
Who doesn't? She smiled down at the little girl and winked. As a thank you, Alyssa offered her lollipop to Skyler. She was never a huge fan of children. You can thank babysitting the Chew's kids for that. But she was genuinely touched by the little girl's gesture and reached her hand out to accept the gift. Before she could grab it by the stick, however, Alyssa put the wet, gooey end into the palm of Skyler's hand. Everett stifled a laugh while she tried to dislodge the sticky candy from her palm. She was not amused. Alyssa and Karen made their way towards Jack and his pacer while the rest of the neighborhood watched on. Once they were all in the car and settled, Jack made a K-turn in the street and drove out of the neighborhood and toward the airport. Many other neighbors decided to heed Everett's advice and followed. After they were out of sight, Skyler gestured towards Dick and asked Everett, "What do we do with him?"
Leave him, Angel. He'll be all right. Cockroaches always find a way to survive.
Sounds good to me. Skyler and Everett picked up their rucksacks and headed towards their backyard. After a few steps, Skyler stopped and turned towards the pit bull, who was still sitting near the minivan, unsure of his fate. "Come on, Buddy. Here, boy." Buddy's ears and tail perked up as he trotted happily towards Skyler and her grandfather. As he passed Dick, who was still on the ground, furious and humiliated, he slowed and then came to a complete stop. The dog's demeanor changed and he began to growl as he approached his former owner. From Dick's perspective, the large pit bull seemed even bigger than ever. He started to panic and struggle, certain that the dog was about to attack him. Instead of attacking him, Buddy walked up to Dick, lifted his leg, and relieved himself all over Dick's head. He then ran and caught up with Skyler and her grandfather, ears and tail perked up once again. "I really like this dog," Skyler informed Everett. Once their backs were turned away from the scene on the street, Father Donnelly warily approached Dick.